For the Plains, let's talk Auburn Tigers. Many camps out there, Blayne, right? Their quarterback position is one of the top storylines. I think this one's no different, right? There are more weapons. What Hugh Freeze did in recruiting, adding so many fantastic pieces at the wide receiver position. I don't know what Hugh's thinking with Peyton Thorne, man. Maybe there's something that I don't see in Peyton Thorne. I'm not a Peyton Thorne guy. If I had any Peyton Thorne stock left, I sold it late last year. I know folks will say bowl games don't matter, but that was an embarrassment, what we saw in the Music City Bowl against Maryland. I don't think it's going to define the tenure, just like the New Mexico State game won't define it, but it was very much a mixed bag, right? You had that New Mexico State and Maryland game. You had the tight ball games against Georgia and Alabama. I think folks are wondering which they get more of this year, but I think it all starts, Blayne, at the quarterback position, right? We need to hear about the continued progression, the growth from Peyton Thorne, because, you know, losing is an unforgivable sin, but losing and having a bad offense when you're Hugh Freeze and that's supposed to be your bread and butter, that's not going to sit very well with the folks in the Plains for very long. Thoughts on Peyton Thorne as QB1 and just thoughts on what you're expecting to hear about this offense this spring.
Well, you mentioned the weapons. Just having Cam Coleman, who they're bringing in as a freshman, is going to be an upgrade from anything they had last year right away. I think in terms of a guy that you could look to see a big leap forward and a guy who has reason for Auburn fans to have some hope. Even last year is Rivaldo Fairweather, some of the plays that he made at the tight end position. He's an absolute monster. So just being able to get the ball to him effectively. You know, I think when it comes down to it in terms of Peyton Thorne, a lot of it was, hey, my wide receivers are getting their tails whooped and they get no separation, and it made him make decisions that he has shown in the past at Michigan State that he normally would not make. So I'm going to give him a little bit of leeway here and say, listen, at least he has been in the fires of the SEC, whereas Hank Brown and Walker White have not. And, you know, yeah, should he have a short leash? Maybe so, and get Hank Brown and Walker White, whichever one wins that number 2 position, get them ready as quick as you can, because you never know what's going to happen. Like I said, you're one play away from needing somebody. But when it comes down to it, I think just having those weapons, having guys coming in like Perry Thompson. I mean, they had 2 5-star receivers, Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson. They flipped Perry Thompson from Alabama, and he signed with them. Coleman's going to be early enrollee. I don't think Perry Thompson is, so that may hurt his development early on in the offense a little bit. But when it comes down to it, I think you're going to see a more explosive Auburn offense. We know what they can do running the football. I think we need to see some improvement out of Jay Fair. Caleb Burton comes in. Robert Lewis comes in. Let me tell you something about Robert Lewis from the Sun Belt, okay? They play good football in the Sun Belt. At Georgia Southern, this guy was electrifying, and he's going to be electrifying at Auburn as well. So many more weapons, many more options. I think that gives Peyton Thorne a little bit of hope, and at least he's been in the battles of the SEC, like I said. And also, by the way, this Philip Montgomery experience, that experiment, that's done. Okay, Hugh says, I'm calling the plays. I'm the captain now, is what Hugh said. So I think that's gonna be a big boost for Auburn as well.
Yeah, Blayne, hearing about how that's going with Hugh Freeze taking over the reins, and I think that was the right move, right? It's raise your hand. Let's tell everybody what you're good at. Hey, let's all do that, right? I think Hugh Freeze, that's what he's doing. Auburn ranks 50th, Blayne, in college football returning experience, 65%. Get this, 74% of that production, or 74% of the offensive production, is coming back. That's 27th in college football. Just 55% on defense, though. 78. Defense was the thing that kept them in a lot of games. Of course, a new era begins, which, by the way, Hugh Freeze just cleaned a house. Some guys left.
Gone.
Yeah, got rid of some other guys. Now it's Charles Kelly who takes over as the co-defensive coordinator. I mean, I think, you know, I'm expecting the offense playing to be better, but certainly the defense continuing to make strides. And you think about the great Auburn teams of the past, and it just felt like when I think of Auburn football, I think of really nasty defense. I think of great defensive fronts. I think that's got to be part of this Auburn football program for them to get back to what all Auburn fans want to see. Really excited to see Charles Kelly, his impact on that Auburn defense, and just kind of what that looks like. And I think seeing guys flying around in that spring game, hearing how Hugh Freeze is talking about it, because I think Hugh Freeze is a guy you can read between the lines. I recall Blayne last year at SEC Media Days. I mean, I was listening to him, and I heard him say, be patient with us, right? And I just thought, he's telling his own fan base and telling college football, we got some things we'd like. It's going to take some time. I think that's what you saw on the field last year. So I'm excited to see how that defense progresses. And when we get our first look in the spring, I think it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. If there's a person, let's say the United States government needs somebody to go in and interrogate a terrorist to see if they're telling the truth or not and find out what's going on so they can get pertinent information and try to end something before it happens, I say send Charles Kelly in, because if there's a guy who after, this year will be able to understand truth from fiction, BS from non-BS, after working with Deion Sanders and now working with Hugh Freeze, Charles Kelly's going to be that guy. He'll know one way or another, okay? But what I'm telling you is Charles Kelly's going to bring a toughness. He's going to bring that relationship with players that I don't know that Ron Roberts was necessarily able to do. He's got SEC ties, where Ron Roberts was coming over from the Big 12. So I think, it's a great move over there on the defensive side of things. Yeah, they're replacing some key guys, but Eugene Asante comes back at linebacker. Austin Keys comes back. He was injured a lot of the years. They've got Kedrick Falk coming back, Jalen McLeod coming back. I mean, lots of guys up front. The secondary with Keontae Scott, I mean, could it get any more, hey, here is an Auburn Tiger. When you look up the definition of an Auburn Tiger, Keontae Scott's picture should come up. He is a hard-nosed, go after you, constantly, doesn't say a whole lot, just goes and makes plays type guy. And I think him coming back is huge. They get Antonio Kite coming over, of course, from Alabama. Who would have thought a player going from Alabama to Auburn? I mean, that's just the world we live in these days. But overall, yeah, they got some things to work out, but I think Charles Kelly's going to bring that great, just more connectivity, more of that connection piece from the coordinator to the players on defense, and allow Hugh's going to say, hey, you go do you, Charles. And I don't think he could necessarily do that with Ron Roberts. Okay. I think Ron Roberts was more kind of dependent on Dave Aranda on Baylor as more of a sounding board and things like that. And we saw it was just a little bit different. Auburn's defense played great at times, okay, but I think now Hugh focusing on offense, he needed somebody that he could say, hey, I trust you to take the ball and just run with it, and that's what Charles Kelly's going to do for that defense.
Blayne, the player I'm most excited to hear about when it comes to Auburn, I got to go with Cam Coleman, man. You mentioned the new weapons, obviously the great five-star wide receiver, the way he's progressing, the highlight plays he's making. That's going to be a huge boost for that offense, and just hearing about how he's coming along, watching him in the spring game. I cannot wait to just hear from Hugh Freeze himself about the special talent that Cam Coleman is. Who is it for you, the Auburn Tiger, that you're most excited to hear this coaching staff talk about during spring ball?
Yeah, I think maybe, we talked about the secondary and having some guys coming back in terms of Keontae Scott, but I think a guy coming over from Texas in Jaron Thompson is a guy that, listen, if you're going to be elite on defense, okay, in the SEC, you need a guy at safety who can do a little bit of everything. He's going to come down, strike you in the run game, is not going to get beat over the top, can match up with some of these monster tight ends that different teams have, like Georgia and all these other teams that are out there that have these big tight ends. Texas has got Amari Knobloch now. You need somebody who can jump in there and play well at safety, and I think Jaron Thompson is going to be asked to do that right away for Auburn. So I want to see how he does, and I want to see how Kayin Lee develops across the other side from Keontae Scott. We know what Keontae Scott is. How does Kayin Lee kind of fit into things over there at Auburn?